Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Seven Eighths, a podcast to share stories on failures and rejections. There are no fairy tale endings in this podcast. My fellow conversationalists aren't past the mountain of struggle. In fact, some of them might still be in it. I hope this podcast serves as a forum for friends and acquaintances to exchange tales of defeat. Defeats that make the 7/8 part of our lives, like the part of the iceberg you can't see. By sharing these stories, I hope we can all normalize failures and thereby win over that fear of defeat. Because failing is just a part of living. I hope you will listen and relate. Do leave me a note of feedback and critique. I am on Twitter at FarmNectar. Now to our episode. Welcome to episode 1 of The 7/8ths. For this episode, I invited a couple of dear friends to share their stories of failures, defeats, and rejections. I'm taking you into our candid conversation. We openly talked about our struggles and explored our disagreements. Just listen in.
I put in X effort and I expected Y yield, and that didn't happen, right?
No,
Sure.
no. I agree that what you say is true, but I feel like there are different aspects to it. So, if you take the Indian culture, they put a lot of emphasis on study, right? Like on education.
No, it depends. It depends.
What
Not every family. Not in my family, not for me.
Oh,
so it depends.
In my family, that's what it was. Like education, big deal.
In my family too, yeah.
Yeah, education was a big deal. You have to kind of like there. I mean, it was not like, oh, it's okay if you don't do it, it's okay, fine. Or if you didn't get good grades, it's fine. I mean, they did make me feel like, hey, you should have given it your 100%, and that would, if you had given your 100%, that would have reflected in your grades or whatever.
Exactly. But, I like the way you phrased it.
When it came to anything else other than education, they didn't put too much emphasis. Like they were like, oh, it's okay if I'm doing something extracurricular, right? It was like, it's okay, chalta hai, if you didn't do great in like your sports at school, you didn't do great at like some other activity, that's fine, right? It was, and that kind of, and until certain point they emphasize so much on education, and then after a point, like when it came to when you're going to be married and like when you're going to they were like, it's okay if you don't get, if when I was trying for coming to US, they were all like, it's okay if you don't get into university there, it's not the end of the world. But for me, in my mind, it was going to be the end of the world for me. But for them, my parents, and it's okay, so what? I mean, it's not like they stopped me, but they were like, that's not a big deal. If you don't get in there, you'll probably end up doing something here, and then of course you're going to get married, and it was like in those situations they were like, it's okay if you don't make it to the top. They didn't push at those points.
What is interesting with what you just said, Sharvi, is when you were younger, just phrasing it as, if you had put in the effort, then the outcome would show it. I think that was almost this Pavlov conditioning to some extent. At least for me, the way now only I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, okay, that explains a lot about why I feel disappointment, because I've just assumed that, hey, if I put in my 100%, then the outcome would show, the effort. But the reality in life is the outcome may or may not be reflective, or may or may not necessarily highlight how much of effort you put in. Which when you come into the like a work environment or a non well-defined environment, be it your work that you're trying to figure your way around, or be it after you get married, this this family, the new family that you've come into, you're trying to figure your way around. There are no rules, there are no, formats, there are no templates to follow. And to me, that was a big struggle, right? I don't know what I should be doing, what I should be saying, because there is no template to this. And effort, right? Let's take, the marital relationships, right? Oh, I'm putting in so much an effort to please, whoever this is, or to get them to understand that I'm doing this out of love for them. And they don't seem to. Like, that's a difficult thing to process. And while we can always say, it is not a failure, it's those points of disappointment that make it difficult to continue.
No, that kind of decreases the confidence you have in yourself, right?
Yes.
It makes you double guess. It makes you think, maybe I'm not good. Maybe, I'm not cut out for it.
Oh my God, yes. Maybe I'm not cut out for it, yes. Sincere என்ன யோசிச்சுட்டு இருக்கீங்க?
எனக்கு still புரியலையா?
What are you not understanding? See, okay.
This can be a drawback too for me. Like there is a story, right, where this guy will be happily singing a song and lying next to a beach. And there is a very successful rich businessman, and he's like, why are you doing this? You should go do some work. And then I do what? You earn money. And then you do what? Then you can happily relax, which I'm already doing now. And that is, see, there are two sides to that story. One is, you're too complacent, you're too happy, so you're not motivated to try a lot of things. You're not achieving. That's one side. The other side is, from his point of view, he's happy. At the end of the world, we should feel happy. That's all. So I am like that guy in Nanigra. So I'm not able to. I am not saying I achieved everything. But the thing is, I don't care. I'm happy. So in position la வந்து என்ன கொண்டு வந்தது வந்து it's the upbringing. It's the conservative, the middle class family background. And I don't know whether it's good or bad.
See, again, it's not good or bad. Like, again, as you said, it's a failure only if you think it's a failure, right? Yeah. Like, it's a failure only if you think, oh, I should have done it, but I couldn't do it. Or I should have given my 100%, but I did not. But if you're already thinking, like, I'm in a good place, I'm happy, at the end of the day, it's all happiness.
Not about good place or not.
Yeah.
It's just, it's okay. Because the one thing is, I hate to have beautiful past. I don't know how to explain that. I hate to say that I had an awesome school time. I had an awesome college time. I always want to think that I'm having an awesome time now. That may be true, may not be true, but if I keep thinking that will become the truth in my head. And in my head, I feel whether I am happy or not. I'm not saying that everything is like perfect. I do have a lot of fights with it. There are a lot of complaints, but at the end of the day, it's in my head, right? Which makes me think that, again, I'm not in a big position in work. I'm not making a lot of money. But in my head, am I feeling that, oh, I want to do this? So I don't know. See, I'm doing a lot of mistakes. Yeah. The thing is, I'm
maybe
not
talk about your struggles. Yeah, talk about your struggles. It doesn't have to be. Maybe failure is a very loaded word, and that's what I'm realizing.
Maybe
we want to talk about struggles, right?
Yeah, that's another thing that also is interesting, right? It's also in your head, right? It also depends on the personality, right? It's nice to be in that mindset that has where she is not living in the past, but she's rather living in the present and enjoying that moments.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I kind of don't do that. Like I feel like I'm probably thinking too much about what I should have done or I could have done, and not realizing that what's happening now is actually, it may not be perfect as she said, but it's actually maybe good.
It's here and now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't, the past is done and gone over with. The future is not here yet. What you have here is just here and now. Yeah. But I don't know, like I mean, I'll give you this. So, is going through a lot of nonsense, right? Like even today, there are layoffs and nobody knows what's going to happen. And one of my former colleagues, he actually introduced me to one of the hiring managers. And I had such a strong PTSD that I just could not reply to that email. I couldn't even bring myself up to reply to that email. And if you just look at my LinkedIn profile, there's all these big brands, like yeah, sure. On the outside it looks great, but if you peel the layers of the onion, I'm like, it's just such a strong visceral reaction, right? That's what I wanted to acknowledge and share. Like, I had an awful time at now. My manager probably didn't know how to manage me. I didn't know how to manage my manager. We weren't speaking the same language. In the sense, like her expectation when she says, hey, do this, then she expected it in a certain way. And then I did it in a certain way that didn't meet her expectations, whatever, right? But still, it made me despise like every single day that I was in that job. Like I just disliked it.
So why do you think it's your failure? Because I thought, like, from what I remember from your days, that it clearly was first a wrong fit for you. And of course, like in terms, because that culture was a super workaholic culture, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't care about work-life balance. That's not a failure on your part, right?
Just the fact that you're framing it that way, it's clearing clouds in my head. To hear it like, hey, why would you call that your failure? It's not. I don't know. I seem to still, it's been 10 years. I still seem to carry that in my head, thinking, like every time, I switch jobs, I'm like, wait, I should be super careful to make sure that I don't have the same experience that I had. I don't know what it is, man. Like every time I went through a pregnancy, wherever I was, it was god awful. It didn't matter. Interestingly, both cases I had female managers. You would think, female managers, they'd understand better. Oh, no.
I feel like in order to get to that level, they have to not care about certain things, and they think their employees should also have that same mindset.
But that's not fair. I mean,
no, it's not fair. Like I'm saying that from also based on the experience. She pretty much had to leave that job, not because she was not doing good, not because she was incapable, not because she was bad at her job. No, it's because of her manager, right? And again, it was a female manager.
Female managers and like vocal extrovert female subordinates, I've seen a lot more
tension
issues.
and Yeah.
Then, so there is this similar to Myers-Briggs, right? There is another personality chart, like whatever framework. அதுல வந்து it's called DISC, dominant,
Yeah.
disc. Yeah,
I have done that.
you've done that. So if you are a high D, which is dominant, or a high I, then I think as a female working for another female manager becomes very difficult and tricky. And again, this is a hypothesis, so I'm curious to see if, like, you know, a high S and a high C, how would they fare? Like the high D is, you know, very dominant. They kind of pick up the trail, like they run with it, that sort of thing. High I now, they're very influential, so they focus more on creating a partnership, creating collaborative environments. So that's the high, like a strong I characters. Strong S characters. So strong D and S, the biggest difference is D, on the high D in this now, you're not comfortable in a very steady, stable, like every day being the same. You get bored very quickly. But a strong S, you put them in a constantly changing environment, they would hate it. They would just like get out of there. They like things to be steady, and they do really, really, really well when the things around them are clearly set. Then they know how to sort of run the ship. Until I went to that, you know, exercise of understanding the DISC framework, I always thought that, hey, like this is a failure. Failure again is a very strong word, but this is a struggle for me and Badri to go through this. I mean, grocery was a funny example, but this shows up in every facet of our conversation of our life. And why is it that we are so different at this, right? For me, the question is, how hard is it to figure out? Like, just, you don't know what milk to buy whole milk. Thanni ஊத்திக்கலாம். Like, you can dilute the whole milk, right? If it is too heavy for you, you can dilute it. But you can't get fat-free and expect to make yogurt out of it, right? I'm like, how hard is it to just get the most common denominator and just run with it? For him, the question is, why would you do that, right? For me, at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lean in for what is the simplest. But for him, he's like, no, I want to get the most right one, most accurate one, right? Until I went to that, I was like, man, why is this so hard? Like, and it helped, right? Like, after you realize that, you're like, yeah, you know, I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But until that point, it was a big struggle.
I mean, okay, yeah, that's one aspect of it, like personality differences, like setting that common communication layer, right? Like, to make sure each of us understand, that's all there. But on top of it, there is also this added, like, each person, as I mentioned, we add our own kind of layers to this failures or struggles, as you call, right? Some people take it too hard. They just like, I shouldn't have done this. This is all upon me. There are people who are like, this is not at all my fault, even if it's their fault, right? They're like, this is not at all my fault. Someone should have dealt with it. That comes across even in work situations where if there are cases where even if someone had to do the work, but I feel if it didn't happen ultimately, I feel responsible. But that person who was supposed to do the work, they are like, it's okay. I mean, so it's, I think sometimes even for that failure, the degree of, or the extent to which we feel something is a failure, it's our own personality also adds to that.
How do you deal with it? Like, you know, how do you deal when you made a commitment and now all of a sudden, like, it's not because you didn't fulfill your end of the commitment, but somebody else in the equation didn't fulfill their end of the commitment. And again, we are not early in our career where we can go out and say, hey, நான் இல்ல டீச்சர் இவங்க தான் அப்படின்னு சொல்ல முடியாது. At this stage of your career, they sort of expect you to manage through that.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? Like, they don't report to you. It makes it tricky if they don't report to you. If they report to you, then chances are hopefully they'll do it. But if they don't even report to you, then what are the levers you use to even motivate them to do this? Otherwise, you end up taking it and doing it, right? I don't know. You try and find what entices them.
I think one thing, if it's a work situation, one thing we should be like bold enough to do is, if we are doing that extra work, we should always be bold enough to go and call that person who has not done that work and like bring it to your manager or whoever your higher up is, like shamelessly saying, I did it and this all worked because of me. We don't do it.
Right? Oh my God.
We don't do it. We feel very humble, like we should be like very humble. We should not tell people like we did all the work and be like those egomaniacs, because we come from a culture that's been asking us to be எதனால அடக்கிவாசி ரொம்ப ஓவரா பே பண்ணாத அப்படின்னு. So it's very difficult, especially like now, even in my day-to-day job, like I see, especially in this product management, product marketing role, it doesn't pay to be humble.
What? I'm just curious. So what is stopping, like, let me be very specific. What is stopping you from actually tooting your own horns?
I'm not confident. I might have done the work. I'm not confident. I'm not like, I haven't done it.
What about the guy who promoted him? Shouldn't he be intelligent enough to know that whether this guy has stuff? Chumma is just making up stories. He should be intelligent enough and figure it out, right?
No,
otherwise he'll pay for it later on.
No. See, that's we all think at that level, but nobody went and say, I didn't go and present to the CEO. The product manager didn't go present to the CEO. Ultimately, he went and presented. So when a CEO is looking at it, what will he think? Is he going to go dig deep and figure out, hey, who did this?
What?
Yeah. For him, he doesn't care. The job is getting done, and there's this person who's telling him how to make it happen, and he's setting the clear strategy and vision, and that's all he cares. And if he knows how to do it, that's all he wants at that level. No, that's when I realized just being able to do like day-to-day things and like doing that hard work is
not enough. But advertising yourself is what is important.
Advertising, making sure your work is seen and heard, and people talk about it. Like you talk about your work first before only then people will talk about it. That's the kind of thing, like it's very hard.
So it's interesting where you said, hey, I didn't have the confidence. Like I went through the same thing. Even most recently, and I told the product VP, I said, there's this whole amount of work that a product manager in how you have defined as a product manager can't take on. That is typically product operations, and you need someone that can take it and run with it. I even made a proposal of how you will set that up and what that will look like, but I didn't have the confidence to stick with it. And to your earlier point, I just didn't have the confidence. to stand by my convictions, to stand by my data and say, I didn't know. I was so stuck at that corner. I was like, okay, I feel so cornered. I really don't know where to go beyond this.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like a failure again is a heavy word, but to me that was, right? That still is.
Yeah.
Like even if I go back and think about it, I'll be thinking of, hey, like how could I have done it differently so that it resounded? Ultimately, it has to resound. And you want to move the coin forward, right? That's why you're putting in this effort.
What if you had pulled in a few of the salespeople, like that influential few salespeople into your side, made them agree, like did the handshaking behind everyone's back, and then went and publicized it?
Yeah. This is what it is. Like this is how, you build allies. So it's not really like to your point, right? It's not about the work. It's not about the actual effort, but it's about how you frame it. Who are your allies, right? Who can stand by you when you're either proposing a strategy, when you're proposing a tactic, you're proposing a change.
It's not a great situation to have like these politics at work, but the reality is there is everywhere. And the unfortunate truth is we don't know how to do it. We have not been taught. all the virtues and things we have been taught is backfiring on us, right? Every time all these things happen, I'm like pretty much blaming my parents. Like, what did you teach me? You didn't teach me any like
life survival skills.
You taught me all the good things to be this really taught me all the good things to be a really nice housewife.
Yeah.
That's all they taught me. I mean, no, they did educate me. They did do all those good things. But ultimately, the skills I've learned is to be humble, is to not talk too much about myself. All those are good in a house setting. That's all it is.
Oh, that is fascinating, Sharmi. You are right. I have never thought about it that way.
See, that also comes back to what I was saying in the beginning, right? Where, you're happy, you're content. It's good. But what if you're not willing to do more? Not willing to push yourself?
That's a different thing. I mean, even there, I find it difficult to, again, each of our personalities are different, right? I find it hard to understand that there have been no struggles. Like there's always struggles, and that's just part and parcel of life. Now, few of them sort of keep, nagging you in the back of your mind, and when you run into a similar situation, it's almost like PTSD. I keep using the term again and again. And few of them you just forget. You're like, whatever, it's not worth my time. But they will be, right? That was what I was like, hey, I want to dig deep on that. Anyway, you gave me two interesting aha moments today. One was just simply framing, like but why is it your fault? It's like, maybe there is another angle to it. The funniest thing is when your spouse says the exact same words, it doesn't have this effect on you. I don't know why. Maybe they know you too well. So you're just like, you know me too well. And then the second thing that you said, which is very deep, is I guess as a parent, now that we are doing the parenting, we'll have to be more mindful and conscious about, hey, are we teaching them life survival skills? or are we teaching them to be just model citizens?
Cool, man.
அப்படியாக இப்போ வாங்க செல்வோம்.
Yeah.
And that's how the cookie crumbles. I realized I'm not the only one struggling with the lack of self-confidence. I realized there are life skills to learn and some even to unlearn. Clearly, don't feel that alone anymore with these struggles. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Do share your thoughts. I'm on Twitter @FarmNectar. Until the next conversation. Cheers, guys.